Tonight on Sasquatch Theory, we travel deep into the Pacific Northwest, into the mist-covered valleys of Washington and Oregon, where something ancient still walks among the trees. My guest Hugh has witnessed things that defy explanation. A mangled deer unlike any predator kill, a towering creature striding through a mountain clearing, and a roar so powerful it echoed through the entire canyon. From upside-down trees to strange pine cones and hidden boneyards, Hugh believes he's closing in on one of the biggest discoveries in North America. This is his story, and it might just change how you see the wilderness forever. If you guys enjoy listening to Sasquatch Theory, please subscribe to the channel, like the video, and comment down below. And of course, if you have a Bigfoot or cryptid encounter you would like to share with me here on the show, feel free to get in touch with me sometime at sasquatchtheory@outlook.com. Alright guys, with all that being said, let's dive into Hugh's Bigfoot encounters from the Pacific Northwest. Alright Hugh, welcome to Sasquatch Theory. How are you doing today?
Oh, I'm doing all right. How are you doing?
Doing pretty good. It's a pleasure to have you on the show, Hugh. If you would, tell me a little bit about yourself, where you're from, and your Bigfoot and paranormal experiences from the very beginning.
Okay. Well, yeah, I live in the Pacific Northwest. I'm in Washington State, but not far from Portland, Oregon. And all of my Sasquatch research is a couple hours away from where I live. But kind of strangely, it all sort of started in the neighborhood, my neighborhood where I live. It was really about a year ago, really close to a year ago now, that we were getting ready to fly to Mexico, my family, for a spring break thing. And I had someone watching the house and watching my dog. So I took my dog on a walk, 11 o'clock at night, up through my neighborhood, and there's this really dark, weird road that goes up to a couple like real high-end homes, and there's no lights on this road. It's just completely treed in, but you're not really in the wilderness. You're in a housing development with sort of this kind of artificial wilderness feel, real close to the Columbia River, and on the edge of the gorge into what is a wilderness. But my area where I live is all homes and gas stations and town. But so we're walking, my dog and I, and right on the side of the road in somebody's yard is this deer that my dogs originally found, and it had been completely, totally mutilated. Like, it looked like it had been hit by a train or something. The front legs were gone, ripped off, and it had been gutted and completely cleaned of every organ except the stomach sac. The stomach sac was completely untouched, completely intact, and there were no cuts. This wasn't done with a knife or a blade. It was all just ripped apart, and it was just whatever did it viciously and did it obviously with intent. I mean, to not rupture the stomach sac when the condition of this deer was just horrendous just showed that whatever did this knew what it was doing. And there was no blood in the grass around it, a little bit of blood inside the rib cage, but all of the meat that like a human would want was all untouched. It was just all organs, all everything. And this thing's just laying right there next to me. Really kind of freaked me out because we don't have bear and cougar in my neighborhoods. Once in a great while, you'll see a coyote, deer come through, but we don't have big, predators in my neighborhood. It was really kind of unnerving. I'm standing there with a three-legged dog in my cell phone and a flashlight. I had no means of protecting myself, and whatever did this to the deer, I felt like was it right there around me. I have no clue what did it for sure. But so I took a couple pictures real quick because I at this time period I wasn't making videos. I didn't have any plans of a YouTube channel or anything like that. I took a couple pictures of this bizarre deer and got the hell out of there in a hurry. But when I got home, we were leaving in less than an hour to go to the Portland airport. So I didn't have time to like report this to Fish and Wildlife or anything. I just had to pack up the car, get everything going. And an hour later, we were on a plane to Mexico. And so we were gone for a week, 8 days, 8 nights, something like that. When I got back, I went up there to check this deer and it was gone, no sign of it. And I thought about asking some of the people that live up there, but I don't actually know any of them. And I just thought it'd be a weird question to ask them about a mutilated deer. So I didn't ask anybody. It was just gone. And it just kind of really creeped me out, that something came through my neighborhood and did that to one of the deer. Because the deer in my neighborhood are pretty tame, pretty used to people. They come into the neighborhood and like every year you'll see the same deer return with their babies. So it really would be a great area for something to hunt because the deer are just so comfortable in here. And it really got me thinking, like, what the hell could have done this to a deer? Nobody could ever convince me that was the work of a cougar or a bear. Just the way it was done, it just seemed like it was done by the way a human would have done it if they didn't have a knife or, anything sharp. It just totally spun me trying to make sense of what the hell came in my neighborhood and did this to the deer. So that got me looking on YouTube at Dogman and Bigfoot, and all these things. I'd heard of all these things, obviously, but I wasn't really a believer. I had assumed Sasquatch was all just misidentifications and hoaxers and stuff like that. Part of me was somewhat open-minded. I've had a lot of weird sort of paranormal experiences throughout my life, unrelated to, Sasquatch. So part of me has always kind of been open-minded to the possibility of Sasquatch, but the kind of common sense version of myself always just assumed, no, it can't be real. If there was giant apes in the forest, we'd have one in a zoo, or somebody would have one on their wall by now, or, it just always kind of seemed it couldn't be real. But this deer really sent me down the rabbit hole trying to make sense of it. Is there a freaking dog man in my neighborhood? Is there, what is it? And that got me watching lots of Sasquatch stuff. And the way YouTube works is you watch one thing, and it feeds you another and feeds you another. And so that was kind of what I'd been doing for a couple weeks at least, was watching all this Sasquatch stuff. And I had a trip planned out to the mountains. And I do a lot of amateur rock mining where I go out and dig, amethyst crystals out of the hillside, or dig big old geodes out of the hillside. And this trip had been planned for a long time. And it's a mountainous area near the Oregon and Washington border. It looks over the Columbia River. It's really close to the ocean. Just an amazing kind of wilderness. And so I'm up there with my father and my son originally, but they'd gotten tired of, breaking rocks and hanging out up there. And so they left. And I was all alone. And I was going to go back because my parents' house is, about an hour from where I was at. And that's where we were staying. And I would go up into the mountains in the daytime and then go back and stay with my parents at night. My whole family was there, my wife, kids, everybody. And so I'm up there breaking rocks, running jackhammer, doing what I do, and trying to get this giant seam of blue agate out of this boulder. Spent hours on this thing, and eventually I got tired of it, and it wasn't coming out. It just wasn't working. And I said, I'm thinking about Bigfoot because I've been watching all these videos and stuff like that. And I'm going to put all this crap down for a minute, take a break. I'm going to climb up to that little hilltop right there, and I'm going to see if I can see a Sasquatch. Like, that was my thoughts in my head. And I didn't think ever that I would go up there and see a Sasquatch. It was just kind of like the backstory in the back of my mind. Like, I'm going to climb up there, and while I'm climbing, I'm always looking at rocks. I'm always prying a rock and lifting and turning and looking in the dirt and seeing what will pop out of the dirt. And so I climb up there. It's a, 150-yard climb, hike type thing up a cliffside up to this viewpoint. And I'm picking up rocks along the way and putting them in my pockets. And then later I wash them and inspect them. And 90% of them end up just getting thrown back onto the ground. But so I get to the top of the viewpoint and I look down into this valley below. And 10 seconds into this scanning, I'm looking at something and I'm laughing to myself in my head, like, oh, that's funny. That actually looks like a Sasquatch right there. And I'm thinking it must be a stump, shadow, whatever. And then it starts walking. It's got long legs, it's got long arms, and I'm watching this thing walk through this clear cut that is pretty far away. I've never really figured out the exact distance, but like several hundred yards down into this valley. But I have a really good aerial view up above, and I'm just like jaw drop, just in shock, watching this thing walk through this clear cut, and in every, I don't know, essence of it is what people would call a Sasquatch. It was dark colored fur, long arms, long legs, walked upright. It even did this thing. I could see it, and it just creeped me out because it's something I do when I'm walking through like tall weeds, and I'll just stick my hands out and I'll scan my hands across the tops of the weeds. Just something I've always done. I don't know, and this thing was doing that, and I was just tripped out. And so immediately I'm like, where's my phone? Where's my phone? I'm patting my pockets, and my pockets are all full of rocks. And I realized my phone is in my truck, and I can see my truck from where I'm at. It's down this hill, parked on the gravel lot below. And so I'm like torn. What do I do? Do I just stay here and look at this thing? Do I go get the phone? If I go get the phone, it won't still be here when I get back. I'm debating all this in my head. And then I'm thinking about, some things that I'd seen. I had a really unbelievable UFO event that I didn't manage to capture in my phone. That has always haunted me. And so I just said, you know what? It doesn't matter. If nobody's going to believe me anyway, I have to try to film this thing. So I just bombed down this cliff, tumbling rocks and debris and making a little avalanche as I fall down this hillside as fast as I can to get to my truck and get my phone, start running, realize I got nothing but rocks in every pocket of this like coverall jumpsuit that I wear when I'm out in the woods. So pull all the rocks out of my pockets, throw them on the ground, and then I run and climb and fly up this hill as fast as I've ever climbed anything in my life. And I get up to the viewpoint, and I'm looking around, and it's gone. It's gone. I'm like, oh shit, it's gone. And then I spot it. And so I get the phone out and I start filming. And on my channel, that was the first video I ever put up. And it's 18 minutes of this incident. And at the very beginning of it, you can hear that I'm just going, like, can't breathe, trying to catch my breath because I'd just done this climb. And so I get the creature into the phone and I'm filming it, but my phone just doesn't zoom. It's, my eyes work. So I have excellent eyesight. And from that distance, my eyes could see so much better than what the phone was able to record. So the footage isn't great, but there's, 18 some minutes of this black little creature, little dot in the center of my screen. And as I'm watching this thing, I could see that its arms would come up and move around. But strangely, once I started filming it, it didn't walk anymore. It just stayed in the spot, and so I'd keep filming. And I actually filmed this thing for about an hour. But a lot of the footage was so poor quality because I would I would be looking at it and not looking at my screen. So the screen would drift away from it. And then these clouds would keep rolling in, and clouds would block my shot for a few minutes. And then the clouds would go back up, and I'd start filming some more. And like I said, this went on for about an hour. But when it got edited down, it's about 18 minutes of footage of this, little black spot down in the valley. And so eventually the clouds got really thick, and I'd been there for a while, just kind of, I don't know, I was kind of not sure what the hell was going on, like, you know kind of questioning my sanity, I guess, if you will. Like, how is that possible, that somebody says I'm going to climb a hill and see if I can spot a Sasquatch, and then next thing you know, they're filming one. It just, the whole thing just, so part of me was just kind of wondering, like, am I losing my mind? Like, and I'm looking at the footage, and I see this little black speck there. And at this point, the clouds had gotten so thick, I couldn't even see down there anymore. And I was supposed to be back at my parents' house by now at this point for dinner. And then some guy pulled up in a truck, and he was like shooting a shotgun off a little ways away. And it just all, I was like, okay, time to go. I got to go. I regret leaving. I should have stayed there and continued trying to get footage to see if that thing would get up and walk away, see if the clouds would clear out. But I left. I went home, and, the whole drive home, I'm just thinking to myself, like, I know what I saw. Like, because at one point I was fully just like thinking, like, am I losing my mind? And then the whole ride home, I'm debating everything with myself, and I get back to my parents, and I tell everybody what I saw and show them the video. And the video, they're like, are you sure there's not a bear? And I'm like, no, it's not a bear. And so the next day we get up and we go back up there, and I go right up to the viewpoint, and I look down. I have binoculars and, stuff for this. And I realize there's a big stump exactly where that Sasquatch was at. But I couldn't tell there was a stump there when I was filming, because the Sasquatch's body was covering the stump. And so I started looking around at all these other stumps with the binoculars in that area. And all of the stumps in that area that are old, decayed, and punky have all been dug through, shredded. There's duff laying all around them, and so I'm convinced that these Sasquatch, these creatures, feed on the grubs. The grubs are a huge part of their diet. I don't know if it's just in the spring when those certain creatures are hatching or what, but I mean, there's evidence of them feeding on these things. At this point, I'm kind of getting my head right. I know what I saw, and I knew that my footage wasn't going to blow any minds by any means. So I decided, I have to really pursue this. I can't just write this off as just some weird experience. I just felt like it happened for a reason. It wasn't just a fluke. Like, too many weird circumstances with the deer carcass being left for me to find, and that's kind of how I see it. And I'll get into more of that later, why I even more solidified in my belief that deer was left for me. So I decided to become a investigator, researcher of Sasquatch, and I ordered some camera equipment and ordered some better camping gear, and kind of got all my supplies together. And I set out on my first kind of overnight mission. I did a couple little one-day trips prior to my first big overnight mission, and I did find footprints, got videos of footprints that I found. I had never done casting. I didn't carry casting supplies, but I'm going to start making casts moving forward. But so I plan out a trip, a 3-day trip, and I'm all alone, just me. I didn't even bring my dog, because I at this point I wasn't sure if my dog was safe or not, with these things. And I go through hell trying to figure out how to get into this valley, because I can see the valley from these viewpoints, but I could just never find a logging road that could get me to it. I could never find a path. And so eventually I kind of gave up trying all these different routes, trying to get to where that Sasquatch was standing, because I wanted to try to get to that stump and see if I could find hair, see if I could find footprints. And eventually I decided to go drive way, way down to the bottom of the mountain, park my truck at a gate, and use my e-bike to come way up this logging road. And I circle back, and I'm kind of on the back side of that valley somewhere, and I see a river, and so I park my bike in the bushes and I hike up this river and I follow it for a ways. And as I'm walking knee deep in this river, I'm walking right up the middle of this creek river thing, because there's a lot of bear in this area, and I just didn't feel comfortable walking in the brush next to the river. I wanted to be in the river, so if something jumps out of the bushes or something, I have a little space between me and it. And eventually, I'm up this river for about an hour, and I look to my left, and I see a giant upside down tree. And it, like, I hadn't even considered finding upside down trees. I was looking for your tree breaks and maybe some tree structures. I'd seen videos about upside down trees, and they were all in Alaska. And so when I looked to my left and I'm staring at a big log upside down, roots in the air, I knew immediately what I was looking at, and just heart started pounding. So I climb up there, and I'm in this little meadow, and there's a whole bunch of them. I think right now that, like, there's somewhere around like 13 to like 16 of them, because some of them are broke off, some of them are just little stumps in the ground. There's some that are big, like impressive logs that have been stabbed into the ground, and they're all different shapes and sizes, different ages of them, and they're all in this little meadow along the river. And I made a video about all of this on my channel. And so the first time I got to these upside down trees, I didn't realize how big the site is. There's a whole nother section to them that I later find. But on that first moment that I got in there, I made a video as quick as I could, and I'm real uneasy because I'm in deep wilderness, and there's nobody around to help me if I get hurt or attacked or anything. And at this point, I'm really just positive that I'm in Sasquatch territory now. Like, it just, there was no question for me anymore. Like, this is the real deal. These things exist. This is their grounds. And so I didn't spend a lot of time there. I kind of just made the video and got out as quick as I could. And so that trip, I went and did some other explorations on the other part of the mountain. I was up there for 3 nights, I believe. And I found another section of just massive tree breaks all over the place that are just way too, I run tree removal for a living. It's a part of my business. I know trees. There's nobody that can tell me, this stuff's done by Mother Nature. I deal with windblown, broken trees all the time. I'm not a fool. I know how to recognize the difference between what Mother Nature can do and what Mother Nature does not do. And I'm finding just insane tree breaks and bends and stuff like that everywhere. And so that trip, I get back home, it was, to me, it was a massive success. I set out to just find a little bit of evidence to corroborate my video, and I find a literal mountain of just unlimited Sasquatch evidence. Like I said, footprints, upside down trees, tree breaks, and bends, and so I immediately start planning and scheduling my next big trip up there. And on that trip, I found a bunch of the X structure things, that other researchers have pointed out. Basically, I start finding every single thing that researchers before me have attributed to Sasquatch, and it was just shocking to me, like the evidence was everywhere. And I'm a few days in on this trip, and I have my dog with me on this trip, and she's a pit bull, but she's not really a pit bull. She's like 2/3 pit bull. She looks more like a bird dog, though. She's only got 3 legs. She's missing one of her hind legs. She got ran over. She's a puppy. So she thinks she's tough. She's a good little watchdog, but because she's only got 3 legs, she's limited on how deep backcountry I can take her. Because I'm always afraid if she hurts a leg, I got to carry her out. And so I was keeping her in kind of easy to get to places, but still deep wilderness. And we're always in canyons. I mean, my research area always takes me to the bottom of these canyons. There's canyons all over this area, and it's all logging territory that I'm in. But the canyons are all protected from logging because of the salmon and steelhead runs that go through them. So you'll go deep into some of these canyons and find old growth monster trees that, have been there, I don't know, hundreds of years, maybe. I don't even know. So it's really cool. The canyons are kind of like a world of their own, if you will. And so my dog and I are down in the bottom of this canyon, and I start finding agates. Like, I wasn't looking for agates, but these agates were like nothing I ever dreamed I would ever find. They were, the size of my head or bigger. Like, I packed out an 80-pound blue agate, and there's other ones down there that are, 150-pound agates. And so it was just kind of ironic that I was originally looking for rocks and find a Sasquatch, and then I go looking for this Sasquatch, and it leads me to deposits of rocks I'd never even dreamed existed. And so I put a bunch in my backpack, and I'm hiking these agates out with my dog. And we're almost up to the top, grueling hike, especially with 100 pounds of rock on your back. And this a creature, I'm convinced it was a Sasquatch, just built out this just terrifying type sound. I don't really even know how to even emulate it. This vocalization that just came roaring out from the bottom of that canyon. It sounded like it came from just where we were at. And I am just immediately freeze in my tracks, and I look at my dog, and she just shrivels up into this little ball. Her ears go back, and that's not like her. Like, she pretends she's tough all the time, but she heard this sound, and she was scared to death. And it was a roar, but it came roaring out with like this, like, rapid fire, repetitive, like, I can't even begin to do it, but it's like, I've never heard anything like it. And it was so loud. It just erupted the whole entire canyon. And like, somebody I was talking to was telling me about a vocalization experience they had. This is a guy I met on like a chat group, and we end up talking over the phone a few times. And he compared this sound to a diesel engine not wanting to fire. And I was like, wow, that's crazy, because I guess that is close to describing what I heard, but that doesn't even give it justice. How like a diesel engine, when it doesn't fire, they're really loud and they have that repetitive sound. It was like that, but 10,000 times louder and more menacing. Just a really bizarre sound. And so I probably should have taken that as a warning, but I have been back into that canyon many times. I'm always pretty nervous now, like when I go into that canyon, but I don't really know what to make of it. But it was something letting me know it was there. And so that trip, trying to remember what else happened on that trip. Other than that, there's always other things happening, but I know that led me to a geologist, because I got back home from that trip and I had all these amazing rocks. And there's a geologist, sort of a friend of a friend type scenario, who I showed him some of these rocks. And, he was like, yeah, that's a big chunk of opal. That's a big chunk of this and that. And he wanted to come out and see some of these deposits. And so we planned a trip, just a day trip, he and I. And we're driving and getting into the mountainous area, and we're almost to where I'm going to park, and we're going to do a horribly grueling hike to get in and out of this particular stretch of river. And I see this is early hunting season, and I'd had it in my head that the Sasquatch probably leave during hunting season. This would have been around the archery and black powder beginning of hunting season. And just a little thing I had in my head, like, oh, they probably leave during hunting season. And I had just been up there about a week prior on a day trip, and not a week, but about 10 days prior. And off to my left, I see this huge Doug fir tree that had been bent over into this arch, and it had been wedged and forced up underneath the neighboring tree. And there's huge scars going up and down the neighboring tree, where you could see whatever did this had to repeatedly bend and force and manipulate and work this tree into this shape. It wasn't anything wind or snow could ever do in a million years. And I see this tree off to my left, and I say, hey, man, I got to go look at this thing. This is brand new. This wasn't here last time I was here. And so I park and I run down there, and I'm making a video of it, and I'm showing all just how impossible this is to for anybody to blame on Mother Nature. And the geologist makes it down to me, and he sees what I'm looking at, and he's scratching his head. And then he goes, hey, Hugh, what's this? And I look over at him, he's holding a big old pine cone in his hand. And, I'm kind of confused, like, pine cone, weird looking pine cone. Cool. Like, I'm looking at this right now, and he goes, no, you don't understand. Like, this is a pine cone from a tree that does not grow here. This is a pine cone from hundreds of miles away, and he's explained to me that this pine cone is from a tree that doesn't grow in our forests, and it doesn't grow anywhere for hundreds of miles. And so that was really weird, that it was underneath this tree. And so we bag it and tag it, and we go do our crazy hike. And I get home, and I'm doing research on this pine cone, and it's a subalpine pine cone, and it does not grow in the forest I'm in, period. It's a higher elevation tree. It grows, a couple hundred miles away. So it's really weird to find it there underneath that arch. And then I look into it further, and it's apparently some tree that was really important to Native Americans for medicinal purposes, and I don't really know what to make of all that. But then I go back out with my son on a trip. My son's 9 years old, and he's camping with me. This is after many, many trips up there. And, I'd been alone many times, and nothing ever made me feel unsafe, other than that one crazy roar. But my son's with me, and we're camping, and we're out tromping around one day, and I find another arch, another one of these crazy arches, these trees that get bent in this most weirdest way. And I'm videoing it and talking about the arch, and my son goes, hey, Dad, what's that? And sure enough, I look down, and directly there in the ground is another one of those pine cones, except I didn't see the first one get found. The geologist was holding it in his hand when I turned and saw it for the first time. But this one I got to see, and it was carefully, intentionally stuck in the dirt, like stabbed into the dirt. And something had even cleared away the little bit of moss and pine needles and debris from the surface to gear like a nice, clean, open dirt patch, and stabbed that pine cone into the dirt like a little totem. Like, it was just bizarre. And it was directly below this arch again. And so, I got excited, and I was filming during all of this, and I had my son hold the camera and film as I pulled the pine cone out of the dirt with a baggie. And so I have both of these pine cones, and, something had to have brought them there. They weren't dropped by a bird, or they're just. I've tried to get people interested in testing them, but haven't really had any luck. I was talking to somebody at SCSU, South Carolina State University. They're doing a genome study on Sasquatch stuff, but he just said they weren't equipped to test that type of DNA. And I really think there would be DNA on these pine cones, because especially one of them has teeth marks in it. And I'm assuming, that the Sasquatch was holding it in his mouth, probably while they were bending and manipulating that tree. Because I do that constantly as a carpenter. I'll hold my pencil in my mouth. I'll hold my vape in my mouth while my hands are busy, So I would assume a Sasquatch would do the same thing. And, but I haven't had any luck. Nobody wants to test them. Nobody's interested in it. And the expense of it, I guess, would just get pretty crazy if I had to pay for it myself. But on that same trip with my son, we were camping, and my friend came up to stay a night. He ended up staying 2 nights, actually. So it was our last night there. And in my campsite, I'd set up like these weird laser light things and stuff like that, and like kind of like Christmas light display, just for my son, just so everything would be more lit up at night, but also to kind of pique the curiosity of the Sasquatch, just try to create something that they've never seen before. And that night, I went to bed around midnight because my buddy was blabbing away. And I was up way later than I wanted to be because he was drinking and carrying on. And so I slept for a few hours. My alarm goes off around 4 a.m. And I roll over and shut off the alarm. And I realize there's a giant shadow directly over my tent moving around. And the reason I could see the shadow was because of the lights flickering, the weird Christmas light things I had. And so I'm staring at this thing, and it's big. It's right outside my tent. And so I grab my camera. I go to turn my camera on, and I don't really know what my plan was. I still had to unzip a tent and get out there, and but as soon as my camera made a little boop 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 doo 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 noise, that shadow just was gone, just instantly gone. Barely, it didn't make a sound. I saw it go whoosh off the tent and was gone. And so I'm sitting there kind of unsure what to do. I have my son in there, and it's 4 a.m. and I'm dog tired, and I'm just kind of laying there debating what to do. And next thing you know, I wake up and it's like 7:30, So I fell back asleep. So I get out of the tent, I start making coffee, and my buddy, he gets out of his vehicle. He was sleeping in his little all-wheel drive thing. And he's like, "Man, what were you doing last night, bro? You were all over my car, looking in the windows." And I'm like, "What are you talking about? I never came out of the tent last night." And he's looking at me kind of confused, like, "You weren't out playing around with your night vision?" I was like, "No, I meant to, but I never did." And so something was in our campsite that night, looking in the windows at him, and looking in his windows and all around my tent. And I mean, I can't prove it was a Sasquatch, but I know it was a Sasquatch. I mean, it sure as hell wasn't a bear. They're loud, clumsy, deer aren't going to come walking through our campsite, especially right then. This was during hunting season. And so on another trip, I was by myself, and this actually happened prior to all this, now that I think about it. But I was in a canyon, and I kept seeing this reddish brown flash through the trees. And it was almost like something was sort of like paralleling me on my journey. And I tried to get footage of this thing, but I just couldn't. I couldn't zoom in through the foliage and get close to it. And I made a little video about it, telling the camera, that I'm trying to get this thing, that something seems to be following me, because I keep seeing this just bright reddish, like fox brown color. And it's a weird color to me, because I wasn't looking for that color. I was looking for a dark black, maybe dark brown color, because that was what the Sasquatch looked like the first time I saw it. And this was new to me, this color, and it was kind of in the back of my mind. Nothing happened that day, but it wasn't until later I got home and I was going through some old micro SD cards footage I had, and I at one point had this. I still have it, but I don't use it very much. It's a camera that attaches to a hunting spotting scope. And the first time I ever brought it out into the field with me, I was playing with it and the sun was shining on my back. So I couldn't even see the screen with the sun glare on it. I was just testing it out, scanning around the valley and looking around. And sure enough, on that footage, I roll right past what looks like the head of a Sasquatch sitting behind a stump, where maybe it was just sitting there, leaning its back against the stump, and all you can see is the head of this bright fire orange reddish color. Like it's just this color that just doesn't make any sense. And I actually rolled right past it twice with that camera that day. But like I said, I couldn't even see the screen. There was so much glare on it. And so I really do think that that's what that is. That's one of these Sasquatch. That's another color that I'm looking for now, is this reddish brown, like fox reddish brown color. And I've had some really, really strange experiences out there that I can't explain, that are just super weird. One of the first times I ever got into this certain area, because I use e-bikes a lot because everything's gated. All these roads are gated and locked. And so I park my truck where I can and I go around the gates on e-bikes. And I finally get into this area that I've been trying to get into, and I'm riding real slow and I'm just looking around and kind of had this nervous feeling, like I was invading somebody's privacy or something. And all of a sudden, just boom, I crash for no reason, really. The bike just like hit an invisible wall or something, and I'm on the ground. And, I wasn't hurt bad, but a little shook up, scraped my leg on the gravel, bleeding a little bit. And so I get back up and I get riding and go up a little ways. And at some point, I realized that my drink was gone. And so I think, okay, my drink fell off when I wrecked. It'll be on the side of the road. And so I went back through and couldn't find it anywhere. I went up and down, couldn't find it anywhere. So I just assumed, okay, that's weird. It just disappeared into the bushes. It's gone. And then I parked my bike somewhere and I go down to look at this river camping site kind of area. I'm exploring around down there. And then I realized that I left my little thing of bear mace, not bear mace, but I bought this mace from a gas station because I forgot my bear mace when I was on my way up there. It's like a can of like mailman dog mace. And so I go back to my bike to get it, and it's gone. It's not there. And I'm like, where the hell did that go? So now I'm back on the road, going up and down, looking for my drink, looking for my mace. And they're just gone, nowhere to be found. There's nobody up there. There's no cars. This area is just completely void of people. So it was just weirded me out. I couldn't find them anywhere. And so then a couple of weeks, months, I don't know, a little time later, I'm back up there, and I put 2 Gatorades or Powerades, whatever, same thing, in my saddlebag on my bike. And I roll out to this certain area and I park my bike and hide it in the bushes. And I open up the pack and I grab one Powerade and I see the other one and I'm like, oh, I'm going to leave it here. That way, when I get back from this hike, it'll just be here waiting for me. I don't have to carry it. And I totally remember having that conversation, in my head. And so I go out and I do my exploration of the area and looking around at stuff. And I come back and I open up the bag and the Powerade's gone, completely gone. And I'm just, but none of the valuables were gone. There was, it was some nice stuff in that pack. I mean, that a thief willing to steal a Powerade would have wanted to steal some of that. It was just, it kind of really creeped me out. And I even one point kind of like yelled into the trees, like, yelling at the Sasquatch, I guess, for stealing my drink. And, I'm out here trying to find them, and they're just like toying with me is kind of how I took it. And, obviously I couldn't prove anything, who took this stuff or how it's disappearing. But, and I get on my bike and ride all the way back to my truck and open up the door of my truck, and the Powerade was sitting there in my truck. And like, I don't know how to, I had such a clear memory of both of them being in my bag, of me debating taking this one with me and leaving one here. And it really just creeped me out. I didn't know. Like, I just remember sitting in my truck, just thinking, like, what is going on, like questioning my sanity, which I guess anybody that's into this kind of research has to do from time to time, maybe. But it was just really weird, really kind of bizarre. And I've had other kind of vocalization experiences too with whistling. I was entering this section of canyon long ago, and I had my dog with me on this hike, and I'd never been in this area. And everywhere I went, something was whistling at me from the trees, following me and whistling at me and whistling at me. And I didn't know what it was. It was a weird whistle. It sounded like kind of like a human whistle, and it just kept. I don't know if it like was something warning people, oh, here comes the human, or what it was. But then a couple days later, I'm in this wildlife refuge at night. It's like 3:30 in the morning, and I go to this place at night a lot because it has a lot of game in there, and it's right by the Columbia River, and I just think it's prime location for like nighttime Sasquatch investigation. And I'm in this wildlife refuge, and I'm listening to these owls that are out hooting kind of back and forth towards each other, and they sounded weird, and they got my attention. And so I got my night vision camera, and I'm walking out there, and I'm trying to get footage of it, and something comes up and whistles like right into my ear. I mean, it was as if something was standing right next to me and just blew a whistle right into my ear. I stepped backwards, stumbled, almost fell, and ran back to my truck, and just sat there and kind of like gathered myself, trying to like it freaked me out so bad. And then under later review of that footage, there's no whistle, there's no sound that was recorded, that I can hear, and that's just tripped me out really bad because it was so loud. I mean, it was like I said, it seemed like something whistled directly right into my freaking brain, and it didn't get captured on the audio at all. And there's been another vocalization that was kind of really cool. My son and I, we were leaving. We'd been up there for days, and he was just burned out on this, Sasquatch research camping trip at this point. And on the way home, we're still up in the wilderness, still up in the area I consider my research area. And I'm turning down road after road, like, oh, I've never been down this road. Let's just check it out. We're on our way out of here. I want to see this road. And so we pull in, and we're looking around, and I'm seeing new tree breaks and new bends and, stuff like that, which is always kind of cool. And we park, and I get out, and I turn the camera on, and just looking around at the trees. And then right then you get these two big old whoops. One whoops off from the left, another one whoops off from the right. And it just, the timing of it was just like so perfect. It was almost like, I don't know, they were saying goodbye or something, it was really cool. And, like going back to the pine cones, I don't know for sure, but a lot of people have told me that those were gifts left for me, and a lot of people have told me the deer, was a gift left for me. And so I never really paid a whole lot of certainty. That's just total speculation on the deer. And I thought, like, why would they have left me a deer in my neighborhood, at a time when I wasn't even necessarily a believer or involved with this subject? I started communicating with the people from A Flash of Beauty, the interview, Sasquatch people. Are you familiar with that channel?
Yeah, I've seen them
Okay.
before for sure.
Yeah. So, and they wanted to meet me and, talk about doing an episode. And so the night before I was supposed to go meet them, I'm watching one of their episodes, and I just happened to click on this interview, and it was this oh, I'm horrible with names. Kunbo, I think is what people call him. Do you know who that is?
Yeah,
Okay, and so he's talking about that shofar horn. Are you familiar with those at all?
yeah, I've seen all the same shows that you have. I'm sure if it's on
Okay,
YouTube.
so I'd never heard of the shofar horn ever. And I'm watching this episode as he's talking about this shofar horn. And I'm just jaw dropped because I own a shofar horn and I had no clue what it was. And I used to play the trumpet when I was a kid. I took trumpet lessons for years. So I can blast a shofar like a pro. And I have a million times in my house outside. I'll open the window sometime and just blow that horn out my window. And I didn't know that there was any kind of significance with that horn and, Sasquatch or Nephilim is, what it's supposed to be tied to. But that just blew my mind. And it just really made me think, is that what brought that deer to be left in my path, like from me blowing the shofar horn around my house? And, I haven't taken it out in my research area and blown it or anything like that, but just so many like strange circumstances, just, one after another. It's, you know, I just don't really know what to make of it. And I'm sure there's some stories I'm forgetting. I've kind of jumped around a little bit from story to story, but
Okay. Do you want
one
me to
thing
ask some questions and then you can talk more about
yeah,
the other experiences as soon as it comes to mind?
sure, yeah.
Okay. So the creature that you encountered whenever you were filming, did you get a good look at it with your eyeballs or did you just get like a partial sighting? Can you tell me more about that?
You mean the first sighting I ever had?
Yeah.
No, I saw it very good. I mean, I was a good distance away, so it's not like I can tell you what color eyes it had or anything like that. But I mean, I sat and stared at this thing for a good probably 10 plus minutes before I ran down and got my phone.
Oh,
And I
wow.
was just watching it walk and just stroll around like a person sightseeing. It's just bizarre.
Okay. So you may have already described this, but what color was it? About how tall? And what features can you describe on the creature? Was there anything that stuck out to you?
The color of it was your kind of standard, really dark. I mean, almost black, but probably a really dark brown. And the main thing that stood out to me was the long swinging arms. That it was walking, because that's when I really just knew, like, wow, I'm not looking at a bear. Like, whatever that thing is, it's not a bear. I've seen bears in the wild. I can't 10 times, maybe more. I don't even know. I've seen a lot of bear. I know bear. I've spent a lot of my life in the woods. And that's kind of part of the reason why I wasn't a Sasquatch believer, because I was one of those guys that's always saying, "Oh, I've spent so many years of my life in the woods and I've never seen Sasquatch," and so I was one of them, and I grew up in the Pacific Northwest, but my parents had a sort of a vacation cabin in Packwood, Washington, and my grandpa had a home in Randall, Washington, and those are two very rural, high mountain communities. And I grew up in that area, and so I've seen elk, deer, bear, cougar, coyote, these weird foxes, these really rare foxes in the Pacific Northwest. I've seen them a couple times, and it was whatever this was none of them, and I know it was a Sasquatch, like I don't even question it.
Yeah.
And yeah, so I couldn't see facial features though. It was too far away to make out facial features.
Okay. Yeah, that makes sense. And the mutilated deer that you found, I mean, people call that a gift, but for me, I see that as them sending a message to you. It's kind of like a warning or a territorial thing, but I mean, I guess you can look at that as a gift, but I don't know. People often
Well, the
call
thing,
like feeding them gifting, but I just call it feeding them. I guess there's a different term with the Bigfoot community, but it makes sense.
yeah, the thing about the deer that it a warning, I actually pondered that too, because at this time period I was doing a lot of walking, trying to lose weight, just trying to be healthy. And my daughter and I were doing a lot of walks. And so we had been on a regular basis walking up into this really dark area and doing it at night. We did all our walks at night with flashlights. And so it is possible that, this something didn't like us going up there at night with our flashlights, and that maybe it was a warning. We're going to leave this carcass here. And I suppose it worked, because I definitely go up to that area a lot less now. And I don't know. I rarely go up there at night. I have a couple times, but I was going up there almost every night at the time period, around like 8:30, not like super late, but
Hmm.
so it very well could have been a warning. Quit
Yeah,
coming up here,
I
you
think
know.
so. I mean, like, I don't know. I see that as a territorial thing, and like the Romans in Jerusalem, like before you would enter the gates of Jerusalem, you would see like people crucified, or they would be hammering people to a cross, and that's a warning. Or like with Dracula, they called him the Impaler, like he would like impale people, and that was like a warning, like if you come here, you know, this is what could
Yeah,
happen.
yeah, and it could be. It just it's in a neighborhood, like a freaking housing development though is what's weird about it. That wasn't in my research area. That was in
Yeah.
my neighborhood.
Well,
So it's just strange. I don't know what to make of it.
absolutely. And I just see it that way because like a gift for me, that would be like, I don't know, like some flowers or some mushrooms or maybe like a car toy. But when you find a dead animal, like that's torn apart, that's sending a message to you.
Yeah, and it very well could be. And I never considered it a gift. It was kind of other Sasquatch people over the, because all of what I just told you, that whole story happened in less than 1 year. Because well, it was almost exactly a year to the day of me discovering uh, the deer carcass, because we leave on a spring break trip in a couple weeks. And then the sighting of the Sasquatch happened the day before Father's Day. So this Father's Day, I will have been involved with this topic for 1 year exactly. And I've found a lot of stuff. I mean, a lot of stuff. I haven't put it all on my channel, but in 1 year's time, when I look at like other people's channels, other investigators, and kind of see what they've put out there over, a decade of investigating Sasquatch, and I'm just, maybe I'm just tooting my own horn or patting myself on the back or whatever. But I mean, what I have found in 1 year, it puts a lot of these other researchers to shame. I mean, I'm talking almost 20 upside down trees, a bunch of these amazing X structures, countless tree structures, and in these just insane tree bends. And a lot of this I haven't even put on my channel yet. I'm terrible with video editing and technology, and a lot of my videos aren't well made by any means because I'm just starting to kind of learn how to do all this stuff. I still got a ways to go, and so a lot of my videos aren't the greatest quality, but I mean, lots of really cool, really interesting things to prove the existence of Sasquatch. And I do hope to eventually make like a real professional style documentary, but I still got a little bit to learn before I get to that point. And I just finished building my studio for my channel. I have a 3-story house, and the 3rd-story room is just a small room that has a view of the Columbia River and Mount Hood and everything from it. And that is gonna be sort of the studio for my channel, where I hope, where I'll be able to sit and do video editing and work on everything. And also I hope to eventually do interviews and really kind of evolve my channel into just something that will just sway naysayers into understanding that these things actually are real. These things exist. So many people think it's all make believe, and I can't blame them for that, because I didn't believe it. And now I'm just probably obsessed with it because it's just became such a presence in my life. But I feel like it all happened for a reason. I feel like I'm supposed to be doing this, for some reason. I just had so many weird things happen to me but now with the Sasquatch thing, I just figured I have to pursue this, like paranormal experiences where you have encounters with ghost like entities and stuff like that. I mean, I didn't know how to even really look into that or even prove that. And then even like some of the UFO sightings that I had, it's like, how do you study UFOs? You just go sit on a mountaintop and just hope one goes by, and then but when the Sasquatch thing entered my life, I know the mountains, I know the forests, I know the trees, I love outdoors. And so for me, it was just like sort of a calling, like, okay, you have to do this, you have to keep proving that these things are real. And that's kind of what I'm doing as best I can. I still got a lot to learn, but really, I think if you sit down and watch my videos, they're, you just can't deny that there's no way the stuff I'm finding is Mother Nature. Something has to be doing it. And people go, oh, loggers or rednecks or, no, it's just, there's too much of it. There's so much evidence of these Sasquatch in the area that I'm in. There's just no way it could be people doing hoaxes. It just wouldn't be possible. The topping of the trees, that's something we didn't talk about. So trees, when they break from wind or snow, they typically break at the bottom, where the roots will rip out of the ground, or the tree will break down low, where all the weight of the tree is causing it to flex and spin. The last place a tree ever breaks is the top kind of section of it, unless it's dead or sick or damaged. A healthy green tree will not break. The top of it just won't. I mean, you can go, like right now at my house, I can look out my window and see trees in every direction, and every single one of them still has their top. It's lightning will break the tops of trees, but typically the top of a tree just doesn't break. And yet in my research area, I'm finding areas where in 1 acre of forest, there'll be 30 trees that have been topped, and they're not cut, they're broke. So something is climbing these trees and breaking them with their bare hands. And then those tree tops are all on the ground, and some of those tree tops get turned into like X structures and different things, but just trees topped everywhere. And I don't know why they're doing it. I suspect it could be just sort of like a middle finger to the loggers, to the logging industry, to breaking the tops of the trees. I don't know. I've never seen anything like it. And I've been making videos going out in high elevations and filming all the trees in different parts of the Pacific Northwest, and just to show how trees tops do not break. I mean, I got a bunch of them. I haven't put these on my channel yet, but they just don't. Trees don't break in that way. And yet, in my research area, there's countless trees that have been topped, and they're all breaks, no cuts, and it's just bizarre. And I was in northern Idaho recently with my family a couple months ago, and we weren't there to do Sasquatch hunting by any means. But I went around and made some videos while I was there to show these trees with snow all over them. And this area was real windy and real snowy in Idaho. And just to show, look, if wind and snow was responsible for breaking treetops, there'd be broken treetops all over right here. And there was none. I couldn't find any of them. And we were all over the panhandle area of Idaho. And eventually I found Sasquatch sign. And that's always something else I say about Sasquatch sign. It's, if it was Mother Nature making these weird structures and doing these weird things, there would be little bits of Sasquatch sign scattered everywhere. And it's not. It's you. If you find real Sasquatch sign, you're going to find a whole bunch more. And it's just how it always is. There's either none at all, or you get into where they're at and you'll find sign everywhere. And sure enough, it took a couple of days, but in Idaho, I finally found I found this weird like pile of sticks that they're known to do. They make these weird little like hut things. I don't really know what the hell they would do with them. And then I found that and was like, okay, so if there's Sasquatch here, there's going to be more. And then sure enough, 100 yards away, I find a bunch of tree breaks, a bunch of top trees, and just a whole bunch more Sasquatch sign. And it's just, I think these creatures are way more prevalent than anybody really understands. I mean, you talk to people all the time. They seem to be everywhere, really,
Yeah, it
but
does seem to
nowhere.
be. Yeah, absolutely. So you've had some paranormal experiences, correct? What's your most memorable paranormal experience?
uh, well, coincidentally, my most, I guess, memorable, most traumatic, it actually happened at my parents' property, which is like right close to where the you know less than an hour from my main research. It's really part of my main research area. That whole region is just teeming with a really weird energy. And this is near what's referred to as the Columbia Bar, and that's like one of the most dangerous bodies of water where the Columbia River enters the Pacific Ocean. And my parents actually live on an island in the Columbia River near there. And also, I'll tell you the story, but also on in their backyard, actually front yard. Now think about it, that's where one of a major UFO event took place. It was witnessed by me, my mom, my dad, my wife, and both my kids. And then so a year prior, or so, no, many years prior. Now that I think about it, I went up to my parents because I had a bad back, and my back was just in really bad shape, and I'd gained a bunch of weight, and I was immobilized, and I'd gotten addicted to opioids in the process. And I went to my parents' house to just get away from meds and just get right. And I had it all planned out, and I had all these things that were going to help me, that other people recommend me to get through withdrawal and all that. And I was staying in my parents' fifth wheel trailer, and it's a long story, man, but it got pretty crazy. I was being basically like harassed by like these demonic freaking beings, man. It started out at first, I thought it was neighbor kids. and they were climbing up on the back of the camper that I was in. And the whole camper would shake and squeak, and I'm laying on this bed and I'm sick, not wanting to deal with anything, and I'd be like, I can hear you, and at one point, one of them I thought was kids was right outside the door of the trailer because you step on this step and the whole trailer shakes and squeaks. So I heard someone standing on that step, and so I jump out and I go to chase them, and they run around and they apparently scale right up the side of a sheet metal wall, and I could hear up on the roof going ping, ping, ping as footsteps were up on the roof of this like pole barn type building that goes over the trailer that I was staying in. And I can't, this is in broad daylight, and I can't see anybody up there. I can't see anything. And uh, I go back into the trailer, and it at some point I was kind of freaked out by what was going on with those weird visitations at night. And I got out of my dad's garage a big old knife and a big old flashlight and a mag light, like a law enforcement style mag light, and this big like crocodile Dundee like hunting knife that my dad had. And so I'm out in the trailer, and sure enough, things start getting pretty weird at night again. And I was looking out the windows, and I could see like people, look like people, but I couldn't get good looks at them because they had like hoods on. It looked like they were wearing hoodies or parkas or something. And this glass on the window is real foggy. Can't really see. It's dark out there. So I started getting really freaked out, like scared to death. Like, who are these people? Like, what is going on? And at some point, one of them climbs up the back ladder, and they're on the roof of the camper, and I'm underneath it, and I can see the panel flexing where they're stepping, and I'm directly below them, and they step right here, and the panel flexes, and all this debris falls from the where the panel separated from the weight above me, and it lands right in my eye and blinds me. And I'm like, oh shit, I'm digging, wiping my eye and trying to get this stuff out of my eye. And right then, something lifts the entire camp, which the whole camper lifted up and goes slam on the ground. And at that time, I didn't realize how insane that is, because since then I've tried to lift and I can't even make that camper wiggle. And I'm a strong guy, and I can't even make it wiggle. And whatever did this actually lifted the damn thing up and dropped it. I don't know if they just lifted an eighth of an inch, quarter of an inch, but it felt like they lifted it up like a foot when I was in it, and it scared me to death. And at that point, I was so freaked out, and I had just done. I felt surrounded. I felt so vulnerable in there, and so I just kick open the front door and go charging out there. And they ran. These guys, people, whatever they were, they ran from me, and I'm chasing them with a big old knife in my hand and a freaking mag light in the other hand. And they run in through the grass, and they disappear into the trees. And I went back to the camper, and I'm trying to make sense of, like, what is going on. Like, part of me was like, am I losing my mind? But then I think about, how all that particles fell from the ceiling and blinded me. So something really was up there putting weight on the roof of that camper. And, it was just crazy. And so they came back. I'm in there and I see they're back out the window. And so I kick the door open and I chase them again. And they run off through the grass and disappear into the trees, into the neighboring property. And so I'm standing over on the edge of the property. And I think I was yelling into the trees at them, saying who knows what. And I turn around, heading back to the camper, and there's somebody standing right in their yard, right there in my parents' front yard. And clear as day, I see this person standing there, and I'm freaked out. And I come running up on this person, big old knife in my hand, big old mag light in the other hand. And I look at this person, it's a female, uh, like a brunette, but like she probably, could be compared to like a beautiful brunette, but like this just insane evil, just like the most wickedest, like just awful presence emanating from her. And I'm looking her in the eyes, and we're like face to face at this point. And she's kind of palish, like almost black and whitish, but with these little green sparkles coming off of her. And she's staring at me, I'm staring at her, and she gives me this just horrible smirk. And I I never felt like this type of fear or just like whatever I was feeling. And I just kind of lost my shit and hit her with the knife, like just swung that knife like a sword, like an axe, and went right through her, kind of went through her shoulder and passed right through her chest area and right out the side of her. And in that split second after it happened, I remember this like moment of shock in her eyes that I did that. Um, and then this all happened in just a second after I hit her with the knife. But then she smirked and just she fell to the ground like grains of freaking dust, like and just like a scene out of a movie, dude. Like I've always said that. Like, it just like was so insane. And I watch her just disappear right in front of me, and I was pretty freaked out at that point. And I don't know, I can't remember why, but my parents end up coming outside. Maybe they heard me screaming when I was chasing the guys. I can't remember, but then I start explaining to them what's going on, and they're like didn't know what to make of it. Like they knew I was going through, trying to get off those meds, and so they weren't sure if I was losing my mind or what was going on with me, and they moved me inside the house at that point, and stuff continued on, man. That's not the end of it, but that was kind of, if you want to know the most memorable, most craziest paranormal experience of my life, that is it. But it continues on, and I've had a lot of weird paranormal experiences, with what I could just say are like ghosts and stuff. Like when I was a little kid in my parents' bed, I was really sick. I was like 4 years old, very young. Three people came in that room and were in there with me, like talking to me and interacting with me, and then they left. And when my mom came in, I was like, "Who were those people?" And she's like, "What people?" I said, "Those people that came in here." And she's like, "There's no people. Nobody's been here." And she's like, "Maybe you were hallucinating." Yeah, a little kid. I didn't even know what hallucinating meant. I said, "What does hallucinating mean?" She goes, "Oh, it's like dreaming." And and I've had some paranormal experiences that were shared with the other people around me as well. Like my wife witnessed some when we were in a hotel room at the coast. There's an old motel that was turned into a like a trendy hipster type hotel, but it was still, you could tell this is just an old kind of like dirtbag motel that they'd fixed up a little bit. And we got in the room, and I told her right away, I was like, "There's a presence in this room with us," and she's like, "No, what are you talking about?" And I was like, I didn't want my kids to know because my kids were staying in there too. It was a 1 bedroom like motel room. My kids were in the back bedroom, and my wife and I were on the bed out front where the TV was. And that night, every time I fell asleep, something would wake me up by popping or knocking or doing something. It happened over and over and over again. So I put earplugs in and to block it out. And I even actually double middle fingered the whole room once I put the earplugs in, because I knew whatever was doing it on purpose. And as soon as I started falling asleep with the earplugs in, boom, the lamp turns on. And it had this touchpad where you touch it with your finger and to turn the lamp on. So something that would be really easy for something like a spirit to interact with. And I turn it off and I'm like kind of freaked out, and I'm laying there and watching TV, trying to get back to sleep, and it turns back on again. So I unplug the lamp, and eventually I fall asleep. And I tell my wife about all this the next day. And she's not sure what to make of it, like, I don't know, it's kind of weird. It's like kind of weird. So then that next night, me and her, mine's the lamp still unplugged, and we're laying there in bed and start falling asleep, and then her lamp turns on, poof, for no reason, and she's just like, whoa, and then I tell it's like a while later, and I'm talking about this, I think with my wife and somebody else, and then come to find out that my daughter was dealing with the same thing in her room. That something was turning her lamp on, the same kind of lamp with the touchpad, and she had to unplug her lamp too. And I just bring that up because that is, at least that's something that was shared by, the experience was felt by everybody, and then I have another one too that was fully shared by a person with me. But do you want to get into all this paranormal stuff, or?
I think that'd be plenty, and we're getting towards the end, but yeah, do you feel like the paranormal experiences are somehow connected with the cryptid creature? I don't know about directly, but do you feel like since you've had these experiences throughout your life, there's some sort of connection?
I do. I very much do. I don't know exactly how to correlate everything, and how to make sense of it. Um, but yeah, I do. I mean, it's just so crazy to think of someone like me. Like, I've had so much of this type of stuff throughout my life, and then there's so many people I know, 65, 75-year-old people, they've never had anything happen to them. They can't relate to any of this stuff because it's and so it's almost like reality just kind of picks and chooses. I'm going to mess with this person and not mess with this person, and it's I don't know, it just doesn't make any sense. But I have to assume that in some weird way they're all correlated. Maybe certain people are more open-minded, and they easily recognize things that other people are just overlooking. But then again, at the same time, like, so much of my experiences were just so blatant that nobody would have overlooked them, and so it's just, yeah, it's crazy. I don't know really what to make of it. I really feel like something is toying with me, in a way, whether that's God or reality or a simulation that we're all plugged into, or what. I don't know. I just have theories and weird ponderings of everything, but obviously all that's subject to different
Absolutely.
interpretations.
Yeah. Yeah, I understand. And that's why I call the channel Sasquatch Theory, because no one truly knows and we're all speculating as to what is truly going on. But yeah, Hugh, I appreciate your time today and for your willingness to share your encounters and experiences with me. And yeah,
Yeah, man.
you did a
Glad to
great
be
job.
here.
Okay.
Appreciate it.
Yeah. Yeah,
And
it's
yeah,
no problem.
if your listeners are interested, please check out Northwest Yeti Quest. It's brand new. I don't have very many subscribers or anything, and I have a lot more to come. So I mean, I'd love to have some people check it out, subscribe, whatever.
All right. Sounds good. And yeah, I appreciate your time. And if you ever encounter anything else in the future, feel free to reach out to me.
All right. Well, yeah, I was going to ask you about that. I plan on doing a lot of investigating spring and summer coming up now that the days are getting longer. And yeah, I was going to ask if you wanted me to keep you informed of my discoveries in this next season. So yeah, I will. I'll definitely let you know if something big happens.
All right, that sounds good to me. And yeah, you have yourself an excellent day, and I'm sure we will be talking again in the future.
Great, man. Thanks for your time.
All right, thank you. Take
All
care.
right, bye.
The forest of the Pacific Northwest holds secrets that few ever witness, and even few understand. Hugh's encounters remind us that something powerful, intelligent, and elusive may be watching us from the shadows. I checked out Hugh's channel on the Yeti Quest, and there's definitely a lot of strange things going on there. I really found the upside down trees to be extremely fascinating, and this is something that's going on all over the world, not just Alaska. This stuff is happening in even the lower 48 states, which is really interesting, and I believe these creatures are marking their territory. I don't feel like it's a friendly gesture, but who knows. I just don't see this being a positive experience, finding a mutilated deer, because if you're truly an animal lover, this is not a good sign. That's my belief. A lot of researchers will call it gifting or call these friendly creatures who want to interact with you. I take that as a bad sign, as a threat. I'm not saying they're all bad, but I just don't see that as being godly. Something that's jiggling your door handles and trying to scare the crap out of you, that is not a good thing, and people need to reevaluate what's truly going on. Until the next time, keep your eyes open, your camera ready, and never stop searching the forest for answers.